Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves. We have a special Around the Clock for you today on the state of Ashland's public safety buildings. Here in town we have two fire stations, one on Cedar Street and one on Main Street. We have our police department building, and then we have an annex for the administration. We're going to share with you today some of the issues that these buildings are having because of the age and the lack of space for our current firefighters and police department personnel. We're going to get to speak with Police Chief Davis regarding the fact that he doesn't even have space within his building for his female officers. We're going to take a look at both stations in regards to the size of the bays and the size of the equipment that's trying to fit and how it's very tight. I want to thank the police department and the fire department for their help in getting this footage and sharing it with you. Hello, welcome to this special edition of Around the Clock. I have with me today Joe MAGNANI. You know him as Selectman MAGNANI. If you've been in town long enough, you also have known him as Officer MAGNANI. And his most newest role is as Chair of the Public Safety Building Committee.
Yes. Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks
Joe,
for having
welcome to Around the Clock.
Thank you.
So we've asked you here today to give us some background about the status of our public safety buildings and what the need is for the community. So let's start with the police building.
Sure. The current building that we have was built in 1978. The doors opened in 1978. And I was actually, that was my first year as a permanent intermittent. I was working there on almost on a full-time basis, 3 nights a week. And the building was small when we got there, when we started. So it was kind of antiquated even before we started using it on a full-time status. But be it as it may, we made do with what we had. A lot of things have changed over the years with respect to the mindset of people and those that work the job. When we first started, there were very few female officers. We've had crossing guards that were actually used as matrons if there were female prisoners. So there was no need for a full-time location for the females to be in. There was no separate lockers or anything of that nature. So unfortunately, this building is the same. That it was built that way and it remains that way. And so it needs updating, and it's like spending good money after bad when you have a building that needs to be redone or raised and put a new building in to support the modernization of the department. I guess that's the proper terminology.
So let's start with the female officers. So what are the female, if there was nothing in the building for female officers when it was opened in 1978, we now have 2 or 3 female officers.
Right.
What are they, where are they going for their locker rooms?
Well, the town had to rent a trailer, which is located out back of the current police station. To me, there is some safety issues with respect to that. Mm-hmm. They use that as a locker room. They also use it as their dressing area. And now it's also used as storage for some of the non-essential pieces of equipment that there is not enough room in the building currently there. And again, there's one bathroom, there's a shower. But again, to me, the biggest problem with that, Yolanda, is there's nothing there for security. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just a regular trailer. I mean, if you want to pry open the door, you can do so. There was no alarms or anything of that nature. I hope by now they may have put something in to alert people that someone's in there. There are cameras and stuff outside, but that's the only status of security. And again, they're thin walls. They're not brick and mortar. Right. So to give that extra security to the officers that are utilizing that space.
Also, our police department now is bigger. Mm-hmm. More technology, based on what was happening in 1978. How has that affected the ability to use the current police station?
Well, some of the things that we've had to modify over the years since the building was built was the lockup area. And when the building was first built, I know Chief Davis uses the comparison of the Mayberry jail cells that you used to see on the end of Mayberry. And, you know, Otis would be in there opening and closing the gate, the jail doors. And they were barred doors. And today those are illegal. So you have to put Lexan over the interior side so that no one can utilize or hurt themselves against the metal bars on the doors. And there's no slide through. So when you needed to give somebody something, a food or whatever, if they were staying in lockup for the weekend, you literally had to open up that door. And when you open up that door, you're subject to that individual that's behind those bars to come out after you and charge after you and hurt you. So again, it's all safety issues.
Okay.
And it's been like that for quite some time. And you know, knock on wood that none of the officers to date have received any injuries. I mean, some got hurt, but no one seriously injured.
Right.
But we've been skating on this for quite some time, and I just hate like heck to see something happen to any of their officers, male and or female.
Yeah. So you've been in town for your whole life.
Yeah.
How long has the discussion of a new public safety building been going on?
Well, let's see. 1982, after I got out of the academy, I got on in '81. We started talking about the possibility of adding more people to the department and talking about a new fire and police station, combining them together. And that was years ago, and that was, God bless Randy Pedersen. Randy's no longer with us. That was a discussion with Randy, Gary Galani, myself, and a few of the other veteran officers, along with some of the veteran firefighters who unfortunately have passed along as well, one of them being Rick Galani. And so that discussion happened, and we brought it to town meeting. And we were literally laughed off the town meeting floor that, you have brand new buildings, you have to make do with what you have. Okay, we get that, we understand that, but at some point, these things are going to happen. You have to either get new modern equipment, you have to keep up with the time, and if you don't keep up with the times, you're bound to get yourself hurt, or you find the people in a situation that, unfortunately, someone's going to get hurt, either the officers or the citizens themselves.
So we've talked about the police station. Before we go to the fire station, I want to talk to you about some of the questions people have is how can we make sure that we're not going to repeat the same thing that happened before, right? Where we put in a brand new police department and within a number of years it was not adequate in size and it didn't meet the needs of our community. How can we make sure that doesn't happen again as we move forward with a combined police and fire public safety building for Ashland?
Well, that's a good question, Yolanda, and I think I can answer that by saying that there were several feasibility studies done, and the most recent one, both police chiefs were involved in designing of the space that was going to be required for future growth down the road. And I know that they were looking at year 2035 or 2040 for that growth to be utilized. So that gives the town a number of years to utilize that building without it needing to have any changes with it. And that was one of my concerns. And when Chief Boothby retired, that was the first question I asked Chief Robie, was that the building that you've discussed and the room sizes and everything, does that meet the needs for this town? Not only for now, but for 20 or 30 years down the road. Do you have enough size now? So that way, looking at future growth.
I would expect at some point, we've been fortunate, we've been able to add fire personnel to the shifts. We've been able to add police personnel to the shifts. But the town is still growing, so there'll be additional needs moving forward.
Absolutely. And again, the change in the population within the department itself, male and female, where before it was just males. So now you have to utilize space and provide space for the two sexes, so that way they have their separate locker rooms, they have their separate bathrooms, and they need their privacy. I mean, God forbid, the way sexual harassment is today and other things, you want to eliminate any and all possibilities of that happen. We have professional officers within both departments. I don't think that'll be a problem, but at the same token, you want to eliminate that, and you want to have a building that, one's going to be safe, secure, and properly built for the people that are utilizing it. Be no different than building a new school and not asking the teachers, what do you think?
Right.
So, but this most recent study was done, those questions were asked to the folks that are going to be utilizing that building.
So if public has questions, how often is the Public Safety Building Committee meeting?
Right now, we're meeting once a week. I know that next week we are not meeting. We're going to wait a week just to get everything calmed down a little bit because we're waiting for publications of all the materials. And once that happens, we'll be passing that out. We're meeting. We met last night. We met again this morning. I believe not tomorrow.
You're doing a number of forums.
Right. We have a number of forums coming up,
and
next week as well. I don't have the list in front of me, but there is we have our website, ashlandpublicsafetybuilding.com. It's on a link to the Ashland website itself, so just click on that and you can see all the information. And the most updated information with respect to the dollars that would be needed and the things that are contributing to this very low figure that we're asking the town to support. And I know that you'll be speaking with the town manager, Mike Herbert, about this.
As part of this show, we're also going to have Michael Herbert on. One of the comments I've heard from a few people is, it feels like we're rushing this to the public to get this done. But you've talked about various feasibility studies. Can you talk a little bit about the actual work that's been done to this date with some of those feasibility studies? You're now the chair of a public safety building, but there was a committee before that. So can you talk a little bit about that? Sure.
This is not something new. This started back in 2000. The first feasibility study was done in 2000. That was 18 years ago. And the figure back then was like $13 million for a combined public safety building. And at the time, it was something new because there was just discussions about combining dispatch to save money and to save manpower. So that's how that originated. And as a result of that, the study was done. But then, unfortunately, other more needed buildings needed to be done, and that was involving the school.
Put on the back.
So it was put on the back burner, and we understand that. But at the same token, as you delay the building of a new structure, costs increase over the years.
Right.
So now you have 18 years of inflation that have affected those figures. And the reason why we're rushing this, I don't think we're rushing it. We have the availability and to receive a $25 million grant. Now, there is no sunset date on this grant, but it's not going to last forever.
Right.
This is a one-time grant that we're very, very grateful that Senate President Spilka was able to get through the legislature to get this done.
It's part of one of the bond bills, and we're going to talk with Town Manager Herbert about that in more detail.
That's one of the reasons why we're really pushing this, because its time is of the essence with respect to that.
Right.
We're not trying to jam anything down anyone's throat, but this is the time, and it's definitely needed. I'm sure if anybody's watched or gone to the farmers market and seen the presentations from the chiefs,
or gone into the buildings,
the building themselves,
numerous open houses.
I mean, I can tell you that there is a need for it. I mean, the downstairs of the fire station at Central Station, as they called it, on Main Street, we used to have our classes downstairs, our EMT classes downstairs, and
You mean in the basement?
In the basement.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I mean, things have changed over the years, but those were the conditions back then, and they haven't changed. If anything, they've gotten worse.
Right, right. Well, Joe, thanks for coming on and being part of this special. We're going to be sharing with you, as we go further into this show, some of the footage of some of the buildings. We're also going to be wrapping up our conversation with Town Manager Mike Herbert as we talk about the finances and the process to get this voted through the town ballot and the town meeting. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Yolanda.
Thanks for coming on, and thank you for your work and for leading this charge.
Thank you. And I just asked the town, the residents, to keep an open mind about everything that you hear tonight and in the forums. I can't ask you to vote for or against. Just keep an open mind and make and all the information that is out there is accurate, that we have, that we're presenting.
Great.
So thank you.
And we'll be continuing with more information.
Hello, my My name's Craig Davis, Chief of Police for the Ashland Police Department, and we're about to go on a tour of the police department, and you'll see some of the inadequacies of the police department, how we've outgrown the facility that was built in 1971. And actually, when it was built in 1971, it was a fairly inadequate structure for the police department of that time. So you'll see as we walk through some of the difficulties that we face working in this environment. So this is our communication center, but it's really what should be a segregated area. So this should be secure from anyone else in the department. But because of the way we're set up, we have to share this space. We have the patrol sergeant's office, which is behind communications. Actually, we made that a couple of years ago. That was never there. It was just actually a row of file cabinets. So we made that area to give the sergeants some quiet space. And then over here is our records department. So this is the area that members of the public would come in and file a records report. It's also an area where our officers would go to either file their police reports or retrieve a police report for court or for other purposes. But this should really be its own entity without any access for anyone else. But as you can see, it's sort of a shared space. The department's copying machine is here, which is the only copying machine that we own. It's our public counter. This is a lot of the scheduling documents that are kept here, so the officers come in and look at the schedules. So there's a lot of coming and going through this area where it should be quiet and secure. As we move down the hall, this door is our evidence room. So this used to actually be my office. But because we never had a proper evidence room, I had to leave my office, and that's why I'm in the building down the street, in order for us to have a proper secure evidence area. So you can see that there's electronic security in order to get into the evidence room. Inside the evidence room is a motion-activated surveillance camera. So we never had that capability before until I left my office. Next to that is another office that is actually the interview and interrogation room. And like my office, that used to house 3 people. Those people have been displaced down the road along with me in order to make room for an interview interrogation room that this department never had. So when I came here, I saw witnesses, victims being interviewed out in the lobby where you were earlier. And crime victims. So that's not a way to run an efficient police department. You need a quiet area that officers can speak to either witnesses or victims or even suspects of crimes. So we created that, which used to be an office. And then moving down here, we don't have to move very far. This area is a common space for all the officers to hold their daily roll call. It's the area where the officers prepare their reports. It's the area where officers have their meals, and it's the entranceway into the men's locker room. So it's, again, a multi-purpose area. There's no quiet area for officers to write reports. There's no segregated area for the shift to hold their shift briefings, and there's no area for the officers to come in and have a break that isn't disturbing the other officers from writing their reports. It's just one shared area, and that's the largest area in the building. There's no conference area, there's no meeting space, that's it. So the men's locker room is in here, but inside here there are no female locker rooms, because when this building was built, there was no provisions for female employees. So the female locker room is an add-on construction trailer that's in the back of the building. So they actually have to go on the exterior of the building to get to the females have to go to an exterior entranceway that's different from this building to get into their locker room, and then come in through the garage after they've changed, and then come here for roll call. So the males change in this locker room, the females have to leave the building, go outside into the trailer, change, then come back in here and join the rest of the crew for roll call. Not a great environment. This area doubles, triples, or quadruples as the female holding cell, the juvenile holding cell, the evidence processing area, and the temporary evidence storage area. because we just don't have any room, we're trying to make do of whatever space that we have. So we have a female cell, a juvenile cell, and they have to be sound site separate from each other. And at the end, you'll see those lockers. That's where evidence goes temporarily until it can be secured into that evidence room. And then over here on the shelves is all the evidence processing material. So it's less than ideal bringing a prisoner to be placed into one of these cells past all of this packaging material that they could easily grab off the shelves and, cause some havoc. So ideally, there should be nothing in this room that a detainee could grab a hold of, but we're so limited for space that we have to have that somewhere, all of those functions somewhere, and that's the only room to put that in. You'll also notice above you, there's missing ceiling tiles. Now this is common throughout the entire building. I just draw your attention to this one area, but this is common throughout the entire building. They don't make these tiles anymore. And so whenever there's a water leak or there needs to be a repair to the wiring, the ceiling tiles, when they're removed, are destroyed, and we can't repair them. So you see these gaping holes throughout the entire structure with wires dangling from them and pipes dangling from them. Not a great work environment. This is a detective office. It's closed right now, but it's one office that houses 3 people, 2 detectives and 1 court prosecutor. So 3 people share one. It's a small office. They share one area. And there's no room for future expansion because we can't possibly put one more desk in there. So even though we'd like to maybe in the future expand some of those capabilities, we can't. There's just no room for more people. This is a setup that we are, another setup that's less than ideal. Now that the lights come on, you can see that this is the prisoner processing area. So this needs to be a safe and secure area. The arrestees come through that door and then are brought into here and are booked before they're placed into a detention area. But you can see there's a bench with a handcuff on the wall. That whole setup is just, not a great setup. But again, we are pressed for space. Everything is shoehorned into this area. We have a breathalyzer machine. We have the electronic fingerprint scanner. And we've had our previous electronic fingerprint scanner. This was smashed. This one is fairly new. But because detainees have access to all this electronic equipment while they're being booked, sometimes they don't act, in the best of circumstances. They're not on their best behavior when they come in here. So ideally, we'd like to be able to keep all this electronic components away from them, away from arm's reach. But because this is a small, congested area, it's just not possible. And there's a storage closet in the booking area, which we prefer not to, but again, we're so limited for space. Now, this area is another locker room. It's for the sergeants and the ranking officers of the department. But in order to get to the electronics of the building that control the radios and the 911 equipment, that equipment is in our attic. And the only way to get into the attic is you have to go through the ranking officer's locker room and then go up a set of stairs and up into our attic. So when we have contractors come in to do work in the building, the only way they can access their equipment is to first have to go through a locker room where people may be changing, but we have to make sure that they're not before we allow contractors in to go up to the attic. It's also our records storage area where we keep archived records. We have our records clerk who also needs access up to that area, and she has to make sure that nobody is in here changing before she goes into the men's locker room to climb up the stairs to bring old archived records either up or retrieve them and bring them down. Again, a sort of a lousy situation. And that's it. That door represents the end of the building. Beyond that is the garage, where it's just a storage and where We bring a police cruiser in, possibly with a prisoner, and then they walk through that door. But on the other side of that door is just our garage where we keep storage and some supplies. That's it. I mean, you can spit and then hit the other end of the building. So it's not something that's that's adequate for today's workforce, and it's certainly not for tomorrow's workforce. We don't have adequate facilities for females. We don't have adequate facilities for the size of the staff that we have today or that we project to grow to in the future. And we really struggle with some of the requirements to keeping a safe and efficient operation because of the physical limitations. As I mentioned, I'm down the street. My command staff is down the street. This is almost an intolerable situation that I'm not here with the police officers. My command staff isn't here with the police officers for that day-to-day interaction. We are removed down the street, but as you saw, there's no way to create an evidence room or an interview room in a modern police station without making space somewhere, and that was the only alternative. We also have some equipment that's owned by the police department that we have stored in other facilities around town because there's no room here for the storage. We have a storage trailer out in the back that we keep surplus equipment and some found property in because there's no room here to store that in. So we have a storage container, a metal storage container behind the women's trailer. So we're sort of a little village of trailers here. And I think you've pretty much seen it all.
Hi, Chief Roby, Ashland Fire Department. Today, talking about the 2 fire stations that we currently house. We operate out of 2 different stations. Station 1 on Main Street is built in 1928, and the fire station on Cedar Street, built in 1988. Currently, we are looking at a proposed to build a new police and fire station, public safety building. Reasons we're thinking about it on behalf of the fire department is we're outgrowing the facilities we have. The building down on Main Street, obviously built in 1928, was designed originally for horses, horse-drawn carriages and stuff like that. Now it's built for heavy equipment. In 1988, we rebuilt the place so it could finally support the weight of the apparatus, but now it's just the apparatus is getting so big, it's having trouble holding all different apparatus. For instance, we can't put a couple different trucks due to length and weight in there. Cedar Street itself was a gift donated by Howard Fafford many years ago. It wasn't really designed to be a full operating fire station. If you look around, the bays in the station aren't wide enough for the apparatus we have today. And we're learning today's standards of changing. You hear a lot recently about cancer in the fire service. We're finding our turnout gear shouldn't be hanging anywhere near our fire apparatus. The exhaust from the fuel is getting on our gear. So we've added systems to take away the exhaust, but it doesn't always work. And they're recommended the gear itself sits in like negative pressure rooms. So it has to be clean when it comes back from a call and then stored in appropriate facilities. With that being asked, we don't have the room to place any of that equipment.
Hi guys, my name is Captain Lynn Morahan with the fire department here, and I am the operations officer and fire prevention code enforcement officer for the department.
And I'm Lieutenant Boland. I'm also the training officer, and I'm the maintenance supervisor and equipment supervisor for the department.
So here at the AFD, we make things happen no matter how challenging they are. And I think you've just seen footage of how we have to position our Rescue 1 inside the apparatus bay floor. We have to bring it in, back it in, kind of sideways so that it allows for that little extra space on the left so the guys can put their turnout gear on without having to pick it up and bring it to another location. This makes it a little challenging for the driver as he backs it in at an angle. These pieces of apparatus are big, So it can make for a challenging day here, but we make it work. Okay, Yolanda, so what you're going to see here is Lieutenant Duca is he's going to move over to his locker here, trying to get his PPE, which is his turnout gear. And you'll see how tight it is between engine 2 and the gear locker here on the left. So here comes Tony. He's got to get his gear. We've got a fire alarm activation. He's attempting to put his turnout jacket on, and as you can see, he's very tight to that engine, and he's not even able to get his boots on. So he's stuck. Okay, so he is going to have to take all his gear out, carry it out to an open space, and then try to successfully don his PPE prior to getting on the engine. So obviously there isn't a whole lot of space for Lieutenant Duca to get his PPE on in this environment. He has to actually take it and move someplace else, which delays our response time if all 3 members have to do that, because it's such tight quarters here between the engine and where the PPE is hanging and stored. So again, we're very limited to the amount of space that we have here at this station. So one of the big problems that we have at this station is room for some of our apparatus. And behind me, you can see our boat 2 is our second boat. And to the left of me that we're going to take a look at is our new brush truck, brush 1. And unfortunately, we don't have the space inside the apparatus to store these vehicles. So what we have to do is winterize them for the winter and leave them outside, which again is not great for either one of the vehicles. All emergency vehicles, to work properly, should be maintained and stored inside a facility, not outside. So when we have to winterize these vehicles, it means that we're taking them out of service. So from the time that we winterize them, they're no longer in service for us, which means we can't use them. So there's 2 vehicles right here, the boat and the brush truck to my left, that we cannot use all through the winter because of a lack of space and storage. So here we're standing inside our Connex trailer, which we use for storage, because again, we don't have enough storage inside the facility. There's a lot of equipment here that's in this Connex trailer that really shouldn't be stored in a trailer. It should be in the warmth of inside a structure. And unfortunately, we don't have that capability. So as you could see, we're storing hose, attack hose, supply hose in this trailer that is exposed to the elements, cold weather, possibly mice and mold. So this is life safety equipment that we use on the truck, and we don't have any other choice but to store it here because there's no space inside the station. So this is the front part of the station, and this is where anybody that's requiring a permit is going to come in, and the person that they talk to is the dispatcher. So if the dispatcher is involved in a medical emergency or fire alarm activation in this community, they also have to deal with the public. So that's pretty difficult task for them, and there's very little privacy. So one of the things that we notice right away is that the public comes in and they hover around, and the dispatcher's trying to dispatch the fire apparatus, and there isn't a whole lot of privacy. So there's a lot going on in that dispatch room, and unfortunately, all it takes is 1 or 2 people out here waiting for permits, and it can be very disruptive to the dispatcher, and they may miss something that's on the radio, important information that's getting relayed to them. So it's again, it's not a very good space or a conducive space for the amount of tasks that we're requiring them to do. So again, we make it work, but it can make it very challenging for our dispatchers. So here we have our dispatch center. Ashland Fire Department is lucky enough to have our own dispatchers. The dispatchers are assigned to groups. They work 24 hours just like the firefighters do. So this is their little space that they live in for 24 hours. And as you can see, it's pretty small. But not only do the dispatchers here take care of dispatching our emergency calls, they're also the command post for District 14. So any of the communities around that are part of District 14, if they have any incident that goes over 2 alarms, they call our dispatchers, and we assist them getting all the resources that they need. So when something like that happens in an event of that, not only does our dispatchers have to take care of what's going on in Ashland and our emergencies, they also have to take care of other people's emergencies too, which is part of the command post. So these guys are pretty taxed, and as you can see, it's a pretty small room. They spend a lot of time in here. So again, expansion is definitely needed, especially for these guys. So we're on the 2nd floor of our fire station, and this is what we call our living quarters. And if you take a look around, it probably looks pretty familiar to you. It looks like your own home. You have a kitchen on the left, a table that we eat at in the center, and on my left, your right, is a TV with some recliners. And the reason that it looks like your home is because this is our home away from home. We work 24-hour shifts, which means we start at 8 a.m. and we stay here until 8 a.m. the next day. So we pretty much, we live, we eat here, we sleep here. So that's why it kind of looks like your home. As you can see, it's a little dated, all the equipment, but we make it work here. We're just one big happy family at the AFD. So the one thing I did want to talk about was this room. Originally, it was just a big wide open space before we had anybody here besides the chief. And then as time went by, we had the dispatcher. We took over the dispatching center. The dispatcher was here. And then we didn't want to leave the dispatcher here by themselves, so the duty officer came here and stayed here too. So as we've expanded, we've had to make some changes with this 2nd floor, changes that the building wasn't really identified for in the beginning. So as we come upstairs, to the right, you're going to see our big day room. This is where we live. This is where we eat. And this is where we break bread together, I guess you could say. And we also relax in the evening in between the calls. And to the left is the bedrooms, and we have the bathrooms on either side. The first room we're going to look into is our, I guess you could say, additional PPE locker. That's where we have no place else to put the extra gear, so as you can see, it's kind of a mishmash of equipment and gear, and that's not the way the gear is designed to be stored. So it's not conducive to the gear in the way that it should be stored for best protection of it for the next person that actually needs to put it on. This is our protective gear. It's vitally important that it stays intact. There's no tears, there's no mold, because we use it to protect ourselves for life safety. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, miscellaneous stuff that gets thrown in there because we really don't have any place else to put it. The shower, the locker room facilities are pretty dated. Again, it's designed for 1 or 2 people, and now we can have a complement of, if everybody comes over here that's on duty, we're looking at 6 people here. 6 people using the bathroom that's probably designed for 2 people. The ladies' locker room is very small too, but thankfully we only have a couple of females on the department, so we never have to wait, which is a good thing. So we're still on the 2nd floor, as you can see, right in the living quarters, and there's these couple of computers that are over my right shoulder are actually our secondary dispatch area. So if for some reason the main dispatch console goes downstairs, this is what the dispatchers have to dispatch out of. So like I mentioned before, we're the command post for the District 14, so it would be a very difficult task to come up here and have to dispatch not only our own town emergency calls, but also other communities' emergencies too. So here we are in our attic space, and as you can see, there's a lot of storage in here, storage of vital documents, and also all my fire prevention stuff that I get for the kids when we have an open house. Over my left shoulder is important documents that we need to save and keep, and over my right is all my fire prevention stuff that I get for the kids that I take to the schools and we use for open house. Along with that, we have CPR mannequins that we use for training, CPR, along with computer items that we use, extra supplies, and also that you can't really see behind you, there's also electronics that we use for our radio systems that is in here, which is, again, is not the best place to be storing any of this equipment, but unfortunately we don't have any other good space for these items, and we don't really want them laying around in the middle of the floor because, like I said, we live here and we don't want boxes on top of boxes on top of boxes where we're living. And our storage area is obviously, it's getting pretty tight. We're running out of space even for this equipment, so just wanted to show you guys this. So here we are at Station 1. We finally made it to Station 1, and we're in the basement at Station 1. And the actual facility is located in the flood zone. And from what you've already seen, the entry door, there's a big water puddle as soon as we walk in the entryway. And you've also seen all the sump pumps that are in action to keep this actual lower level dry. Anytime we have inclement weather, high waters, high rain, the basement gets flooded. This is our gym area. We share it with the police department. All the equipment we were lucky enough to get, it was volunteered by gyms. So there's a lot of expensive equipment here, and unfortunately every time we have a bad rain, we have to come down here and try and soak up all the water off the mats, and the sump pumps are they really have a difficult time keeping up with it. The room we're in right now is kind of the changing room for the police department when they come in here, and as you can see that there's like an inch of water over here to my right. As we move around the gym area, you saw a shot of the filter that's being held together with weights. So it's kind of tough, you know. We're trying to be healthy, trying to keep the guys safe. They come down here to work out so that they are in better shape physically and mentally. It's a great release for them, especially during a 24-hour time. And we certainly don't want to put them in more danger when they're trying to get healthy. So this is definitely one of our hazard areas in the station. And again, the guys have done everything they can to make it work because they really enjoy coming down here and staying fit and keeping healthy.
So the room we just saw is the SCBA repair closet. Obviously, you could see that it was very limited in space. As the field technician for all of our SCBA, I have to actually do all our work in there. And the room is actually only big enough for a half desk and a chair to sit down and actually do our work. Coming off that room, then we come into our apparatus bay, which you see behind me. This building, a little older than the station that you looked at before. This was originally the primary fire station in Ashland before the one on Cedar Street was built. And this station, being older, it's a little limited. When we design our fire apparatus, we obviously try to design the best truck that's safest for our firefighters and going to provide the greatest level of service to the people in our community. But we're limited, because one of the first things we have to think about when we design these is it going to fit into the Main Street Fire Station? The engine you see behind us, we had to specially design this truck to fit in this station. The brand new engine one that we have that responds out of the Cedar Street station does fit in here, but it fits very tightly. And we spent a great deal of time speccing that truck to make sure that it would fit. It does, but it's very tight. We also had to spend a good amount of time on speccing the ambulance that we purchased last year to make sure that that fit. Trucks are getting bigger. With the more expectations that we have in this job, they want us to be able to carry more equipment, and with that, we have to have bigger apparatus. We also are concerned about the angle on the front of the station. The ramp itself is not level with Main Street. So we have to take that, the pitch and the angle of the truck. Even though the truck might seem small, when it backs up on an angle, it could still hit the ceiling on the doors. This is our boat 1. At the Cedar Street station, you saw that we have to winterize our boat 2 just because we're limited in space. We do everything we can to try and maintain at least keeping one boat in service, but because of that, the boat needs to be stored inside. And as you can see, this being the bigger of our 2 boats, it does take up a great deal of space at the Main Street station. We do have to make some adjustments, and with a boat being as far back as it is, sometimes it makes it difficult trailering it out. The guys need to be really cautious about how they drive when they're trailering the boat out of the Main Street station. As you'll see right here, this is what we call our Plimo vent system, and as time goes, certain things change in our environment, especially where we're firefighters. We live here for 24 hours a day. There's a 24-hour functioning fire station. Not only do we provide a service out of here, but the firefighters live in these quarters. So one thing that we've been really challenged with lately is trying to keep the facilities as particulate-free as possible. Cancer is a big thing that we're worried about in the fire service now. And what we've done is we've, over time, had to retrofit and spend a lot of money on retrofitting the services that these buildings have. Being an old building, we have to bring it up to code. But one of the things we have here is our Plymouth system. Diesel particulates is something that we're really concerned about. We don't let the trucks run inside the apparatus bay unless we're going in and out, responding to or coming back from a call. And we have to make sure that any time that these boots and this system, which takes all that diesel particulate out of the building, is ejected to the back, and that way it doesn't affect the firefighters in their sleeping or living quarters upstairs. So now we're upstairs, and as you come through the top of the stairs to our second floor, or the living quarters and office space for our firefighters here at the Main Street Station. When you first come in, the first thing you're welcome to is kind of our open area. We have a couple pictures of the history and the tradition of the fire department in there, some of the trophies that the past steamer companies. There's a good amount of history with this fire station. The station itself was built in 1928, and obviously you can see from some of the pictures a lot of the pride that the guys have in this facility. When you first come into your right, you notice a closet. That's our EMS closet. EMS in the fire service has become a very big thing. Everyone here in the department is a paramedic. And with that being said, we need to make sure that all of our EMS equipment is stored in a safe, secure cabinet area. And obviously you can see from some of the shelves that we're starting to become limited in space. As we move away from our EMS area, you see the firefighter's office, work area, study area, where we have 2 desks, a couple of computers where the firefighters are encouraged to try and do as much training as they can. They're also encouraged to finish some of their EMS reports, and a lot of the other activities that the firefighters do happen in that room. When you come in here, this is our day room, what they refer to it as. It's our kitchen and also the day quarters. During the downtime that the firefighters might have, this is commonly where they're at, in the kitchen. As you can see, some of the cabinets are the original cabinets that may have been here for a number of years. But like I said, one of our goals is the firefighters are here for 24 hours. They live here. They treat this as if it's their home. They do all the maintenance. They do their own upkeep. They try the best to keep things as, in as pristine condition as they can. And we want them to be comfortable here. For the time that they're here, we want them to be, allow their downtime to be as easy as it can be. So they do spend a lot of time in this room. Then we also, over to the left, as we exit, you'll see that we have a couple of similar-sized bedrooms. There's sleeping quarters. There's 3 individual bedrooms on this station. And then we also have 2 locker rooms. We have a small, separate 1-shower female locker room and a 1-shower male locker room that's also limited in size.
So the one thing that I do want to reference is that this particular facility and our station downtown, we're a little bit different than the other buildings in town in the sense of we live here. We're here 24/7. So the buildings, you know, they feel that because there's always somebody here. If you go to the town hall, it's 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are. But here at the Ashland Fire Department and the police department, there's always somebody here. And as we expand the department, there's more people that are using these facilities 24/7, using the bathrooms, using the kitchen, using all the rooms. So the buildings, they get pretty beat up, and you know, it's starting to show.
We're continuing our discussion about the need for new public safety building here in Ashland with our town manager, Michael. Welcome to Around the Clock.
Yolanda, thanks for having me again.
So we've talked in great length during the show. We've done some interviews. We've showed our viewers the status and what our public safety buildings look like. We're coming to you to tell us, how are we paying for this and what does that mean to our residents? So start where you think is appropriate.
Good questions. Certainly very salient, and I know people watching are very interested in this. I think we should talk about it first in terms of total project cost.
Okay.
So we're projecting that this project altogether will cost $30 million. That includes land acquisition costs, that includes the site work, that includes the design and engineering, what we call soft costs, and then also the construction costs.
Okay.
But we're in a unique place here in Ashland because through the diligent efforts of our state legislative delegation led by Senate President Spilka, $25 million of that $30 million for construction has been set aside in a bond bill, which is only set aside in that for a limited time. So taxpayers are not on the hook for that. Ashland taxpayers are not on the hook for that. In terms of land acquisition, we've actually been able to work out with the landowner of the site that's been identified as the prime location for a public safety building, a donation of the 4 acres necessary to build it. So that saves the taxpayers another $1.5 million. So out of that $30 million project cost, all we're asking taxpayers to be responsible for is $3.5 million. So almost 10%. It's really an unheard of opportunity here in the Commonwealth.
Right.
We do have programs like the Massachusetts School Building Authority, regular ongoing programs that have reimbursement rates for new schools.
Right.
But they never approach anything like 90%, and those are always ongoing. This is a one-time only shot through a bond bill. But then I think the next logical question is, okay, so I'm an Ashland taxpayer, what does that mean for me, right? What is that $3.5 million? So if you look at the average tax bill on a home that's assessed at $350,000, which once you mix in condos and single-family homes, that's where it is. That $3.5 million translates to a $30 million or $30 increase on taxes a year for 20 years.
For an average home of about $350,000. Okay.
Correct.
Which we know for many people that is not the average assessed value of a home here in Ashland. I mean, that might be the average, but there are many people who are well above that. So have we calculated, you know, for the person who has the $500,000 or $600,000 home, we're probably talking $50 to $60 a year.
Correct. So
Okay.
it's roughly about $9 per 100,000
Okay.
of value.
That's a good way to put it.
But it's also, the timing is also fortunate because we also have projects that have been done as debt exclusions that are actually coming off the books. Significantly, the high school, the town hall, and the community center are going to be coming off the books starting in FY24. So roughly 4 years away from now. And people will actually see the debt excluded portion of their bill actually go down by $200 once those come off the books. So the debt excluded portion of the average tax bill is going to rise up to around $330 when you look at the things like the Valentine estate that we purchased, the Minda School feasibility study, and then also the public safety design and engineering. But again, when the others go down, you're going to be paying less than $100 on the debt excluded portion.
Good, good. How do we get this done? What needs to happen? What do the voters need to know?
So there's 2 critical votes that are happening both in November. The first one is a ballot vote when we do the election on November 6th. So I think everybody's heard a lot about questions 1, 2, and 3 on the state ballot. In Ashland, you will have question 4. Which authorizes the town to go above the Proposition 2.5 limits for that $3.5 million for design and engineering funds. Now, it'll say on the ballot question that it is for design and engineering, but it won't have the number on it.
Right.
We're not allowed to put the number on it per state statute.
Okay.
So some people might say, well, isn't that just giving a blank check to the government? And that's not the case, because the second vote that's important and that will happen will be at the November 28th town meeting. And so that's where the town meeting will hopefully appropriate the funds for the design and engineering of the public safety building. And that's where you will see that limitation, that $3.5 million.
Okay, so 2-step process, ballot on November 6th, town meeting on November 28th. They can also participate in early voting if they want to do that. Where can they get more information if they're not quite understanding, or they watch the show and they go, okay, it makes sense, but I'm not quite sure yet? Where can they go for more info?
I think the main resource that folks should utilize is the website dedicated to this project, ashlandpublicsafetyproject.com. That's all one word. There you will find pictures documenting the need, documenting the conditions. You will find the documentation about the inadequacies of the department or of the facilities,
spaces, yep.
and then also the land feasibility and stuff of that nature, and then some more materials. I did a blog post not too long ago explaining a little bit more about the finances and including some graphs and showing how the debt will go up a little bit and then fall down significantly in a few years.
Good. Any last words to the voters as we wrap up this show and give them this information about the public safety building? Well,
I think I really need to impress, and I think we all need to impress upon people that this $25 million for construction in the bond bill is a really, really rare opportunity that many communities do not have an opportunity to take advantage of. We're going to have to replace our facilities at some point.
Either way, we based on what we've seen, we know we need to replace them.
Exactly. And I think it would be kind of short-sighted. What did they say? Penny wise and pound foolish.
Yep.
To not vote the $3.5 million now, but then 5-10 years down the road, be on the hook for
the full 30.
For the full 30, and it will
at
be
that point it'll be 35 or 40.
Exactly. So the timing is right, and you know, I hope everybody supports it. I think it would be good for the entire community, not just our public safety departments.
Well, because our public safety department supports all of us, and they're there, and we've always been told we have a very good police and fire department. Our first responders are always doing a great job. So
they are.
Well, Michael, thank you for coming and talking to us on this special Around the Clock. Thank you for watching this Around the Clock special on the state of our public safety buildings. If you have any further questions, please make sure you reach out through the website and go to the Ashland Public Safety website to find more information. Make sure you get out and vote on November 6th, and of course be there for the special town meeting that's happening on November 28th. And again, I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves. Thanks for watching this episode of Around the Clock.